I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, I'll have the last lecture is up on YouTube already. I'll have this one up. If not today, I'll have it up by tomorrow. After I get back to the room and convert all this over into a YouTube style video that you can watch if you miss something. All right. Again, this is kind of a weird lecture because it's a U.S. history class, but so far we haven't been to the U.S. yet. We've been everywhere else because we're trying to figure out who came here and why they came here. Today, we're going to talk about Christian Europe a little bit. And at the start of this period, Roman Catholicism is the only type of Christianity there is. The Catholic Church in Rome was Christianity. And it was the dominant influence all the way throughout Europe. We've seen in Spain, they called themselves the Christian kings of Europe. Well, or the Catholic kings. That was kind of everywhere. And people were out exploring the world in the name of the Catholic God. But things are going to change in the 1500s, about the same time period that most of the Age of Exploration happens. And they're going to get kicked off by this guy at the top left as you're looking at it, the guy with the funny looking beret, a German monk named Martin Luther. I will tell you that in my opinion, Martin Luther is one of the most incredible men that ever lived. I'll tell you the story about him a little bit. And I want you to keep in the back of your mind, the reason why we're studying this German monk is it's going to be his type of Christianity that comes to America in the form of Puritanism and pilgrims, okay? So it's not going to be Catholicism that comes to what becomes the United States. Catholicism is going to go to Latin America. Protestantism, which is kicked off by Martin Luther, is going to come to America. And what he does is he kicks off what we call the Reformation. And the Reformation is literally a reforming of the church, to form again. It was an attempt to correct what Martin Luther and others saw as the eccentricities of the Catholic Church. So let's get to know this guy, Martin Luther. Luther was born to a fairly well-to-do middle-class family, an upper middle-class family. And his father had one dream for him. He wanted his dad and his son to be a lawyer. Some of your parents probably want you to be lawyers. You can make pretty good money if you're a lawyer. That's what his parents wanted of him. And Luther, being the good son that he was in the 1500s, 1517 to be exact, he goes off to law school. And he excels at it. He's that person that you all know one, that no matter what class you're in, they're always the number one, the top of the class, because they work their butt off and they get things done. They just work at it so hard. Well, that's what Martin Luther was. Top of his class. Hated every minute of it. Didn't like it. He's at a place called Wittenberg, which is where the university was. One of the oldest universities in the world.
It still stands.
Still stands. It's mostly a theological university now, but it does still stand. It's a seminary. But Martin Luther is coming home for one of those college vacations where you got to go home now, you got to go do your thing, and we'll come back later. And he's walking back to his hometown. Pretty good walk. It'll take several days. And we know this from Martin Luther's own diaries, his own explanations later on. He says he was walking down the street and the rain started to fall. And it was the most torrential, horrendous rainstorm he had ever seen. The imagery that we get when you read this is of this young, probably 19, 20-year-old German monk. He's studying law, but he's studying law at a seminary, so it's a religious university, and most law was religious law. And he's heading down this road, and the water's falling, and this is a muddy road. He's probably sinking up to his ankles in mud. The water's flowing down the road, and it's coming down in buckets, probably almost to his knees coming down. There's lightning striking everywhere. This has got to be terrifying. And he writes in his diary that he dropped down on his knees and prayed to his family's patron saint, St. Anne, the mother of Mary. Drops down and says, "St. Anne, if you'll save me, I'll dedicate my life to God." And the rain stopped. Now I want you to think about that for a minute. This guy has just made this pledge. If you'll just stop the rain is terrible. If you just stop it, I will dedicate my life to God, and the rain stops like that. That's got to freak somebody out, okay? Especially in a time period when we didn't understand science. It rained because it was God's will, and it stopped raining because it was God's will, okay? But he's a man of his word. And he goes back to his dad. And I can imagine what the conversation must have been like. "Hey, Dad, you know all that money you spent to send me to college to be a lawyer? Well, I've decided that I'm not going to do that anymore, even though I was the best in my class at it. Instead, I'm going to become a poor, poverty-stricken monk that won't make any money for the rest of my life." I'm sure his father wasn't real pleased. In fact, I know his father wasn't real pleased because his dad says, "Get out." He goes back to Wittenberg. He switches over and studies for theology, where again he is the best in the class. He goes all the way through and gets his doctorate of divinity. He becomes a doctor of God, a doctor of religion. He is so good at it that when he graduates, instead of going off and becoming a priest somewhere, they invite him to be a lecturer at the college. And he begins teaching divinity classes. Most popular professor on campus. He's well-spoken. He tells good stories. They like him. But he has a problem. Martin Luther asks that question that we all ask at some point in our life. If you haven't asked it yet, you will at some point. Why do good things happen to bad people? And how do I know if I'm going to heaven or hell? So he goes to his bishop, the abbot of the church, and he says, "Hey, how do I know if I'm saved?" And all the abbot says is, "Go read the Bible." This was probably not the best advice to give to Martin Luther if they wanted to control him. Because Luther did exactly what he was told to do. He took that big old Bible from the church. And those days, everybody didn't have their own. They had, this massive tome up there. It's like a weightlifting workout to pick up the Bible. Big, handwritten. And he took it and he went down to his cell. A simple, probably 8x8 room with nothing in it but a bed, nothing to distract him. And in a fortnight, he read the Bible from cover to cover. That's 21 days. He read the entire Bible in 21 days. Why is that a problem? Well, he read it pretty serious. And he said, I have some issues. He said, I can't see it here anywhere where it says anything about a pope. And the church was selling indulgences. I don't know if you know what an indulgence is, but the Pope was selling get out of hell free cards. I kid you not. They were these certificates, and you could pay for them, and it would forgive you of your sins. Now, if you went out and committed another sin afterwards, you have to go get another one. But it would forgive you for your sins. The Pope had agreed to sell these indulgences in order to raise money to build St. Peter's Cathedral. And Martin Luther's furious about this. He sees these people buying these indulgences. He says, I can't find in the Bible anywhere where it says that you could buy your way out of hell. And he looks through and he finds all these different problems. In fact, he finds 95 of them. Now, he's a good Catholic. He wants to be a Catholic monk. He wants to be the best he can be. But being the studious, responsible overachiever that he is, he writes down all 95 of these problems he finds, and he goes and nails it to the door of the Catholic cathedral where the bishop lives. Now, this is heroic. Without a doubt, it's heroic. But the other side of it is, we got to realize that that's where you posted everything. It wasn't like he was posting something where nothing's ever been posted before. That's where all bulls were posted. A bull was a legal message from the church. In fact, so much so that our term bulletin board comes from that word. That's where you post the boards you put the bulls on, the bulletin board. Well, the church's front door was where you did that. But he went up there and he posted a list of 95 theses complaining about the church. And it might have stopped there. Everything might have been fine. Except, by purely coincidence, it's 1519 now, and a guy named Johann Gutenberg had invented the printing press. And he needed stuff to print. And somebody got him a copy of these 95 Theses, and Johann Gutenberg mass printed them. And within a month, there are copies of it in every major city in Europe. And people are reading it. And people are questioning whether the Catholic Church is legitimate. That was not Martin Luther's intention. He did not want to break the Catholic Church. He wanted to fix the Catholic Church. But people took what he said and they went, the Catholic Church is corrupt. We have to break it now. Well, when the word got to the Archbishop, eventually it got all the way to the Pope. The message comes down, and the quote that is written is that the Archbishop told his clerics to, and forgive my language, but this is a quote written down, bring me the head of that damn German monk. An arrest warrant was put out for Martin Luther, and he was called before the Archbishop. Now, remember, he is very popular. They really don't want him. They really don't want to punish him. They just want him to stop questioning the church. He's arrested, he's called before the church, and he is told ahead of time. One of the cardinals comes to him and says, listen, Martin, here's the deal. You're going to get called before the Archbishop. You're going to step before the Archbishop. The Archbishop is going to ask you if you wrote these words. And on this table are all these books that Martin Luther's written. And by the time this happens, Martin Luther hasn't just written the 95 Theses. He's written a bunch of essays and books about it now. There's just a table full of stuff that Luther's written. He's going to ask you, are these your words? You are going to say they are. And then he's going to ask you if you still mean them. And you're going to speak one word. You're going to say recanto. Means, I take it back. I recant. No, I don't mean it. I take it back. And if you say those words, everything is forgiven. You get to go back to Wittenberg and be the most popular professor on campus again, and your life will be good. If you don't, then you're going to be in church and we're going to have to kill you. Now remember, Martin Luther at this point is still wanting to be loyal. He doesn't know what to do. So he's called up there, just like as they were said. He gets up before the archbishop. Excuse me. The bishop says, "Are you that German monk, Martin Luther?" He says, "I am he." "Are these your words?" And he points at that table, and Martin Luther says, "They are mine." And they said, "Martin Luther, do you still mean those words?" And Luther stands there for a minute with this puzzled look on his face. And he says, "Let me think about it." Let me think about it? Come on. So the archbishop says, "You have 24 hours. Send him back to his cell." And Martin Luther writes in his own diary that he wrestled with the devil all night long. Now, I like the imagery of Martin Luther, out there with the devil doing, doing suplexes on him or something. But that's not what was happening. When he says, "I wrestled with the devil," he means I was wrestling with my soul all night. What do I do? Do I tell the truth, or do I take the easy way out? Where's my loyalty? Is my loyalty to my Pope or to my God? What do I do? All night long, he deals with it. And finally, he's called back before the archbishop. "Are you that monk, Martin Luther?" "I am he." "Are these your words?" "They are mine." "Martin Luther, do you still hold these words to be true?" And Luther threw his arms out like he was Christ on the cross, laid down face first on the ground, arms out, almost in subjugation to Christ. And he says, "Here I stand. They are my words. I can do no more." Let me translate that for you. Yeah, I said it. What you going to do about it? They ordered Martin Luther arrested. But before he could be arrested, it turns out that some local princes in Germany, the German states, there wasn't a country called Germany yet, but the German states, Holy Roman Empire was the country. Some of these local princes had been so inspired by Martin Luther that they had sent mercenaries to watch the trial. And these mercenaries, whenever the arrest order was given for Luther, they grabbed Luther and rushed him out before the soldiers could arrest him. And they took him to a guy called Frederick the Elector. Frederick the Elector was the Prince of Saxony, and he protected him. Martin Luther was excommunicated. He had a death sentence put on him. And he no longer even pretended loyalty to the Catholic Church after that. He broke all the rules. He married a nun. Priests couldn't marry. Neither could nuns. He came up with the doctrine of sola scriptura. Write this down somewhere. Sola scriptura means the Bible alone. Scripture alone, literally. And what he meant there was, it doesn't matter what a priest says. It doesn't matter what a bishop says. It doesn't matter what a pope says. What matters is what the Bible says. And read it for yourself. Why is that going to be important? Well, because that's what's going to kick off the Protestant Reformation. And it's literally what it sounds like. Protest is the root word of Protestant. It is a group of Christians protesting and reforming the church. They formed a new church. If you are Lutheran, Baptist, Methodist, Episcopalian, Assembly of God, I'm just running through whatever I can think of off the top of my head. If you are basically any type of Christianity outside of Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, or Russian Orthodox, Martin Luther started your faith. Okay? Now they're all gonna grow off a little later, but this was the first Protestant. I like the guy. Got a lot of respect for him. Then we got this next guy who is right there as you're looking at it, to the right of Martin Luther. The guy that looks like a weasel, that's John Calvin. I will confess to having a lot of sympathy for Calvin. Calvinism is going to be like taking Lutheranism and putting it on steroids. Okay? John Calvin took the idea that God is all-knowing, and he ran with it like nobody ever had before. He came up with the idea of predestination. John Calvin believes that every person on earth was born predestined either for heaven or hell. And it's not your works that do it. God already knows. Before you're ever born, he knows if you're going to be saved or not. That is a terrifying idea to a lot of people. We call it the tulip doctrine. Tulip is that, you see it up there, you'll never have to write these down anywhere. I won't make you. But tulip is man is totally depraved. That means every man is full of sin. Period. That's pretty basic Christian belief. Okay? Second, that unlimited atonement. That means unlimited forgiveness by God. God can forgive anything. That is also pretty standard Christian belief. Then we get to the third one. Limited election. Only some of you are going to go to heaven. Some of us ain't going to make it. Okay? Okay, well, that's still not far off basic Christianity. I don't know any Christian groups that believe everybody's going to heaven. Otherwise, why would you have that, really warm place down south? Okay? There's got to be a reason. Fourth one is irresistible grace. If God calls you, if God wants you in heaven, his call is irresistible, and you will go to heaven. And finally, the perseverance of the saints. Those people that are elected will succeed more than others. What this means is that there's no way to tell whether you're saved or not, because your works don't matter. It takes free will out of it. Now let me tell you why I've got a lot of sympathy for John Calvin. Logically, in my mind, if I look at it, and we accept as Christians, most of us, that God is all-knowing. Right?
Yeah.
That's pretty standard. God is omniscient. He's all-knowing. And most of us also believe that he's all-powerful. Omniscient, omnipowerful, and then omnipresent, always present. He's always here, he knows everything, and he can do everything. So John Calvin would say, if you believe that, if you believe that God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and always here, then the day you were born, God already knows, he's all-knowing, what you're going to do in your life, whether you're going to go to heaven or hell. He's all-powerful, so he could send you wherever he wants to, but he's going to allow some people to go to heaven. He's always present. He sees everything. So, that's a kind of terrifying idea. That leads people to question things like, why should I care about leading a good life? What I do doesn't matter. And some people see it as very soothing. Some people look at it and they go, oh, I'm so relaxed. I've lived my life right. That means that I'm of the elect. God has chosen me. I can relax. Things are going to be great. As long as I live my best life, I'm going to. Some people live it. Most people do. But other people look around and they go, hey, John Calvin says that good deeds don't matter. I might as well have a good time while I'm here. God knows where I'm going, to heaven or hell anyway. Mardi Gras every day, baby. Okay? And that's the danger of Calvinism. The only reason we really talk about John Calvin is the guy that the Puritans followed. So when the Puritans come to America, they're going to be Calvinists. Okay? There are still Calvinists around here. I attended a Calvinist church for a long time when I was younger. I'll tell you my problem with Calvinism, because I think it's fair for professors to always tell you their own bias. I agree with most of Calvinism, but they get into infant damnation, and they believe that infants before the age of reason are damned to hell if they die. I can't do that. I can't go there. All right, so we've done Martin Luther, we've done John Calvin. Next is I want to talk about this guy, Henry VIII, down here at the bottom right, fat guy. Now, ladies, I don't have any ladies here on my campus, but there's ladies on West Sabine and Brookwood, except for Cameron. But you ladies need to know that this guy, the bottom right, was considered to be the most attractive man in the world in his time. Okay? This is what was considered sexy. Okay? Aren't you glad you're not alive then? However, I think I'd have been a real stud back then, so it all works out. All right, so this is Henry VIII. Henry VIII is also a religious leader. He was the leader of Anglicanism. Anglicanism is the Church of England, but for an entirely non-religious reason. I tell this story just because it's kind of entertaining. Henry VIII was never supposed to be King of England. He had an older brother that was supposed to be king, that was raised to be king when his father died. Henry was, they called him Good Prince Hal because he was a fun guy. He liked to chase women and drink a lot. And he was really good at chasing women and drinking and really bad at everything else. But his older brother died. So Henry has to step in and kind of take over. So when his dad dies, Henry becomes king. Well, a king needs the perfect wife. They look around and they find this lady. Her name was Catherine. Catherine was the daughter of the King and Queen of Spain, the niece of the King of France, and I've forgotten how she was related to the Holy Roman Emperor too. She was the niece of the Holy Roman Emperor too. Okay? So, Holy Roman Empire, Spain, and France. This is the perfect person for the King of England to marry. Excuse me. It would give his children a claim on 4 kingdoms. The problem is, she already married somebody else. And the person she had already married was Henry VIII's dead brother.
Heck yeah.
Now, she's not married anymore. He's dead. Okay? So she's a widow. But the Bible in Leviticus very clearly says that you may not marry your brother's widow. It's a sin. And a king really shouldn't marry a divorcee or a widow because they've been married before. They need to marry somebody innocent. But Henry really wants to marry this woman. So he sends a letter to the Pope asking permission to marry Catherine. Pope denies it. Okay. What do you do? What do you do? Well,
You get it.
huh?
He gets the Pope killed.
Well, he could try that, killing the Pope. There's an easier thing to do. First thing he does is he asks the Pope why. The Pope says, you can't marry her. She was married to your brother. That's a sin. So he gets Catherine to sign a legal letter, an affidavit we call it today, saying that she had never consummated her marriage with her first husband. They never had sex. Okay? Now, in the eyes of the church, until a marriage is consummated, it's not really a marriage. So the Pope kind of looks the other way and says, fine, marry her. It's okay because it doesn't break a biblical rule, because she never had sex with the person, although they were married for 3 years and lived together. I got some questions about that, but Henry VIII does marry her, and she gets pregnant very quickly. He throws a party. The baby's due. He says, hey, come on out, we're going to have a party. I'll introduce you to my new son. It's going to be awesome. In the meantime, the wife's back there giving birth while he's up there drinking with his buddies. The baby comes, they call him in, they say, come see your baby. He goes up there and goes, oh my God, it's a female. He doesn't need a female, he needs a male. Because at this time period, women could not inherit the throne. It had to come down a male line. Her name was Mary, by the way. He gets Catherine pregnant again. The baby dies. The baby's stillborn. Again, loses the baby. In the meantime, Henry's got a wandering eye. And he noticed that one of his wife's ladies-in-waiting was kind of hot. And he wants to marry her. So he sends the Pope another letter saying that he wants a divorce from Catherine. Now here's the problem. The Pope gave permission to marry, and now you're asking the Pope to undo what he did. It would be like the Pope admitting that he was wrong about something, and the Pope is supposed to be infallible. And to make matters worse, the Holy Roman Emperor, Catherine's uncle, provides the army that defends Vatican City where the Pope lives. And the Holy Roman Emperor tells the Pope, if you embarrass my family by granting Henry VIII a divorce, I will burn this city to the ground. I will burn the Vatican. I will kill everyone inside the walls. I will burn it all down. There will be no more Rome. So the Pope refuses. This leaves Henry in kind of a bad situation. What do you do? Well, he asks some of his advisors, and one of his advisors says, I got a great idea. You can't get a divorce unless you ask the leader of the church, right? Oh, he says, yeah. He says, why don't we just start our own church? And we'll make the King of England the leader of the Church of England. Henry says, that's a great idea. And they break with Catholicism. They make themselves the Church of England, Anglican Church. Henry VIII is the leader of the church. Now he asks himself for permission. Self, he says, Self, can I divorce my wife? Sure, Self, go ahead and do that. So he divorces his first wife, remarries. That's why the church exists. Now, I'm not going to go into all the other stories, but this was not the end of his problem. His second wife is beheaded. She also has a problem producing a male heir. He accuses her of adultery. So his first wife divorced. His second one he beheaded. His third wife died mysteriously. His fourth wife he beheaded. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, divorced, beheaded, died. His fourth wife he divorced. His fifth wife he beheaded. And his sixth wife finally survived it. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived.
That's why.
Now, the biggest reason I like to tell this story about Henry VIII is I am a very distant relative of Henry VIII through one of his bastard children. And I like to remind my wife of that periodically every time she starts to get a little out of control. I could cut your head off at any moment. Okay? She doesn't listen to me. All right, so now we founded Lutheranism, Calvinism, Anglicanism. And then we got this guy, Erasmus of Rotterdam, who is kind of a weird character. Why did that just do that? There we go. Give me a second to get back to where I'm supposed to be. My TVs are doing weird stuff over here. Erasmus of Rotterdam at the bottom left, sometimes called Erasmus of Christendom. He was a philosopher, he was a Christian humanist. He stayed loyal to the Catholic Church, but his big thing was he wanted to somehow make science and religion say the same thing. So he was trying to prove that the Bible was scientifically accurate. Not a whole lot of that comes to America, but that's what we're going to call a Catholic Reformation. So this is kind of the people that formed the Reformation and the ideas that are going to come to the United States eventually. Why else did people come to Europe? Well, or come to America? Well, Europe is going to go through some major changes. There's going to be a mini ice age in the 1500s, where temperatures are going to drop pretty dramatically. They're going to drop 4 or 5 degrees on average. Now, 4 or 5 degrees might not sound like a lot, but if every month, think about it, if every month the temperature was 4 or 5 degrees cooler than it was the year before, you're going to shorten your growing season by a lot. You're going to have a much shorter season to grow crops. And that's going to lead to famine. It's going to lead to an unhealthy population. And in this unhealthy population, the Black Death is going to expand. I'll show you what Black Death looked like in a little while. At the end of this period, we're going to have an expanding population that's going to fuel business, commerce, trade between countries. Largely because you got to do something with those people. So what are you going to do with them? Well, we're going to go beat up our neighbors and take their land. That's part of what the Age of Discovery was. This is going to happen after all of these nation states start to form. We've already seen one in Spain, where they united their kingdoms and they formed a giant nation state, where the armies are all loyal to the king and queen. That happens all over Europe. There's also the first bankers in the world. You may have heard of one of the most famous ones, a group called the Rothschilds. Incredibly famous group of bankers. They're going to start during the Renaissance at this time period, and they're going to be the organization that loans this money to the nations so they can afford to have the Age of Discovery. The other way they're going to do it is they're going to sell stock certificates. You're going to have the first joint stock companies. We'll talk about one called the London Company, another called the Virginia Company, that both get their start as ways of selling stock certificates to make money for exploration. I'll give you just a minute to finish writing this down and we'll move on. It takes a long time when I tell the Martin Luther story. See, we end up having like 3 slides in a lecture instead of a long. I'm going to skip this one. You don't have to write this down, but I'll talk to you about it. This guy Marco Polo was outside of this area, but he's going to be the guy. He's an Italian that goes to China and discovers the riches of China. He comes back with all kinds of wild stories, flying elephants, more fiction than history. In fact, there's some question as to whether Marco Polo ever actually made it to China, but he had some really high quality maps. I'm going to skip some of this. This is Marco Polo's map, so you can kind of see how he starts in Italy. That's that boot-shaped spot up there at the top left of the map, and follows the Silk Road all the way up to what becomes China. He's a prisoner there for a while. He probably is the guy that introduced Christianity to China. We'll talk about this guy, Zhang He. He never ended up in textbooks until very recently. Yeah, please write this one down. I'm sorry. There's some people that believe that Zhang He discovered America. He was a Chinese sailor. Somewhere between 1405 and 1430, he sets off with an armada of 317 ships and 37,000 men. This still today is the largest ocean-going armada in history. This is bigger than the armadas that we sent off in World War II. At least the number of ships, not number of men, but he had been sent off by Yuan Shangzi, this emperor of the Ming Dynasty, to carry stories of China out, kind of sell China's glory around the world. We know he visited at least 37 countries because we found stela with Chinese writing where he built these in places. There are people that believe he discovered America. The reason they say that is because in the Sacramento River about 15, 20 years ago, parts of a Chinese ship were found, particularly a bell. How'd that get there? Well, at some point, it seems the Chinese were there. Why wasn't this important? Well, by the time Zhang He showed back up in China, there had been a cultural revolution. The Mings had been overthrown, and they had shut down all their desire to explore the world. So they never came back. They didn't stay. Not a super important discovery, but they probably were here. What's that?
They could have had America.
They could have had America, yeah. Or we could have had a Chinese presence on the West Coast and a European presence on the East Coast. That kind of would have made sense. Got it? All right. To give you an idea, you don't have to write this part down, but this is a scale model of what Zhang He's ship looked like next to Columbus's ship. Okay? This was a massive ship, 440 feet in length.
Do they still have like ships?
They do still have those kind of ships. They don't use them as warships. They're more cultural now, but they do still use those. All right, so the Black Death. There were two different types of Black Death. Write these down. There's the bubonic plague and the pneumonic plague. The bubonic plague was only transferred through blood to blood. You had to have an open wound. And it was characterized by swelling, usually around lymph nodes or places that are warm on the body, like armpits, your groin, back of your knees, your neck, down below your chin, places that stay wet and warm. When they swell up, the flesh would die around it. You get what was called a bulbus, which is like a giant blood blister. And around that bulbus, you get this gray ring of dead flesh. And you would smell like rotting flesh. Okay? Eventually you die from it. The pneumonic plague was the same disease, but it was airborne, and instead of affecting the outside of you, it got in your lungs, and it broke your lungs down, and you started bleeding, and you just choked to death in your own blood. You drowned in your own blood. Both of these are terrible, terrible ways to die. And if you've never seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, you don't know what the bring out your dead thing is. If you have seen it, you're laughing right now. No, hadn't seen it. That's sad. Got it? So, I'm going to show you this. How does it spread? I know I skipped some of that, but you've got it all on your thing. We know it starts in Asia. You don't have to write this part down. Came to Europe on ships that were carried that carried rats and fleas. And what happens is the fleas would act as a vector between the rat and the person. So the rats would get this disease, the fleas would bite the rats, and they would bite people, and they would carry that disease over there. It's absolutely a terrible way to die. It is still around today, unfortunately. That's just a chart showing you what I just told you. All right, if you're disturbed by things, I apologize, but here's what it does to you. Now, there are historians that believe the song Ring Around the Rosie is about the Black Death. And if you look at it, look at this neck here. This bulbous was called a rosy. And can you see the ring around it? Where the skin has died. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies. They would put flowers in their pocket because they believed when you got near these people that were rotting, they smelled bad. They thought the smell was what got you sick, so they would stick flowers in to cover the smell. Ashes, ashes, look at his finger. And then we all fall down. Everybody's dead. Okay? Still around today. Not in the United States, but it is still around. We know it started in China. There's just a map for you. I'm not going to go through all this. Parents are abandoning their children. You don't have to write this part down. If your kid got sick, they would take the children out and abandon them in the woods. You know stories about this. You know fairy tales. You ever heard Hansel and Gretel? In the original version of Hansel and Gretel, the child was sick, and that's why the father abandoned them. That's why they're in the woods. They cleaned it up a lot of times in our modern versions, but that was the original version of the story. You hear stories about like woodland sprites and fairies that would come and take the child away and replace them with demon children. Well, that was their way of justifying that they abandoned their child. But their child didn't die. Their child was taken care of. This one had died. This is a demon. They traded it for. There were people that called themselves bikini. Notice it's not spelled like the outfit, spelled with a CH. But the bikini would wear the red robes that signified that they had the plague. But they would use it as a weapon. They would just like kick people's doors in and walk in with the red robes. People would panic and leave, and they'd rob them blind. Okay? This happened all the time. The church is going to lose power at this time period because it's hard to have faith in God when you look around and everybody's dying. Okay? Art becomes more realistic. Some people looked around, I only have a short time to live. I'm going to have a good time while I'm here. And they did everything you weren't supposed to do. Okay? Morality broke down. Law broke down. Everything. I'm skipping a lot of this just because of time. This is what's left of a painting. The middle part has been burned out in the painting, but you can see, kind of still get a feel for what it was. It was a description of what the Black Death was like, and if you look, God is up here just watching while everybody's dying. This was the image people had. Even our God is not on our side. Okay? Even our God is not helping us. The death wagon was something that was common in art. You'd see a picture of death coming in a wagon and hauling off the bodies. Not at all uncommon. Even the nobility was dying.
What was that?
What was what?
What was like the percentage numbers?
I'll have to go back here and show you these numbers here real quick, since you asked about it. I kind of skipped past it. There you go. Look at these numbers. In the year 1000, there were 38 million people in Europe. 1100, 48 million, 1259. But look what happens in 1347. 1347, we had 75 million people in Europe. 5 years later, we're down to 50 million. 25 million people died in less than 5 years. 90% death rate. Yeah, it's massive. It's massive. Europe is not going to recover to that 75 million number for about 500 years. It's a long time. All right, hey, let's just quit there for the day. We will pick up here next time. Guys, if you have not gone on your Blackboard and signed up for your class, signed up for your research topic on that Google form, please do so. There's 4 or 5 of you that have not yet done that. I need that all on one sheet of paper. Even if you've emailed me, go ahead and go in there and click on it so I know, okay? I will see you guys later. Have a good day. I'll hang around for a little while.